Hello and welcome back to CleanTalk, the podcast shining a spotlight on inspiring professionals and organisations all across renewable energy, clean technology and sustainability. Today we've come over to the Netherlands to Rotterdam, where we're going to be speaking with Thaddeus Anim-Somuah. Thaddeus works in corporate sustainability. He's actively involved in the World Energy Council, and he advises on a number of impact and energy-related investments. In this episode, we're going to explore how energy, materials, finance, and human behaviour are all deeply interconnected, and why sustainability only works if it creates real value for people. Thaddeus, thanks for joining me on the show.
Hi, Luke. Thanks for having me. Great to have you over here in Amsterdam and also to talk to a fellow Brit. So what do you want to know?
Wind the clock back for us, Thaddeus. What were the earliest seeds of an interest in sustainability for you?
The first 5-6 years of my life, I grew up in Ghana, which is where I'm originally from. I'm a proud Brit, but I'm also a proud Ghanaian. And when I was in Ghana, I grew up with my grandma, and there you see firsthand actually the effects of inequality. You see the effects of climate change, the effects that climate change could have as well. So concrete example, plastic waste, secondhand clothing waste on our beaches. You could just see that to this day. You can see that. And, water shortages, electricity outages, that's what you would see. But also you saw this brilliant community, a lot of joy, a lot of togetherness. And you would see people who would get maybe a little leg up, a little loan from another rich person in the family, and all of a sudden they'd set up their own business and they'd fly away. So it gave me the seed that, hey, I've seen what's wrong. I've seen the potential for greatness. When I got the opportunity to go to the UK, I said to myself, I want to give something back to the little version of myself. I want to make things better for, people at the end of the day, not just planet. It's all about the people. And that was the initial seed. I got the privilege to grow up in UK and make my dreams and become a chemical engineer and go into the business of, making things. And then later into really making things more sustainable.
You mentioned there about people flying away. What did it mean for you in your own career to gain critical mass or escape velocity?
What I saw there basically is you've got a big community. So people really, they carry each other through parts. Somebody gets unemployed in the family, they come in your house, they eat for free, they take whatever out. You do stuff together. And it's all about the people there. I think when you've got less, your life becomes simple, and the things that you care about are the things that you do, you prioritize, right? And in terms of circularity or something, they were making stuff go as long as possible because you're short on money, right? So you're reusing fabrics. You are definitely taking your glass bottle back to the manufacturer to get that little bit of money back. Those were the things that you would see. And you would see also some people will go from nothing and then they will have a business idea, and then their business idea, it could go pretty quick. And all of a sudden, that person will be the person giving back to the community within the family. And I thought, okay, when I get the opportunity, I want to be the person making the change for different communities. So that started off first with my passion to get into chemical engineering, because let's say chemical engineering is at the basis of what we're doing. Even the chairs that we're sitting on right now, they weren't originally chairs. Chairs don't grow on trees. The plastic in our microphones, it was something before it was that. Even the material we're talking about is not the first thing. Before the material, maybe it was a fossil fuel, petroleum or oil. Maybe it was animal-based. And chemical engineers go from the idea of, we've got some kind of oil or fat or whatever we have, and we make it into something like what you're seeing today. And that's why I wanted to get involved, and that's what I studied first. And first I worked for an oleochemical company, so they basically make some of the stuff that you can make from fossil fuels, from petroleum, but they make it then from plant-based and animal-based natural resources. And even there, I saw, hey, we're already being sustainable by using a more sustainable resource, but we can go a next step further by doing it with less energy and thinking more about, okay, what we're doing for the people and the impact that we can make with our products.
You touched there on this concept of the circular economy, which is a fascinating economic model that looks at reducing waste and increasing reusability in different, essentially like product life cycles and things like that. Do you think that the circular economy is best sort of demonstrated, or most elegantly demonstrated, in instances where there's a scarce amount of resource, so you sharing about your upbringing, or do you think that it works best where there's an abundance of resources? Or I guess, how do you compare the two?
When we talk about the circular economy, it's great that there's a lot of innovation that's making it possible to use things again, that's to give things another life, keep them in the economy after their use. However, I think you've got to think of the simple model first. Complex stuff has simple solutions. A simple solution is often to start off with using for longer, with using for less, to rethink. When we're talking about the R ladder, we start off first about rethinking, about not actually even having the waste in the first place. And why is this so important for energy? A lot of the energy that we are using is coming from our material consumption. It costs energy to make things. But also, when we want to change this whole energy transition, we want to change this climate, we want to stop climate change, and we want to move to renewable energies, it takes materials to make wind parks, to make solar parks, to make batteries, nuclear. It takes a lot of materials. So if we can be more efficient with our materials, we can reduce the amount of energy that we are needing. We can reduce the impact on the environment, because CO2 emissions is one impact, but there are other impacts coming from the whole way that we use the materials. And that's why I would like to say that everything is interlinked. It's together.
Yeah, exactly. It can be a bit reductive to just isolate energy out of all these other components that kind of fall into the same conversation. When we were on the train earlier, you mentioned about this holistic perspective you have and how energy kind of is encompassed in all sorts of sectors, from finance to construction and lots more. Can you tell us more about this holistic perspective?
When we're talking about a holistic view, we've got 9 planetary boundaries. That starts to get quite complicated. We've got 17 SDGs. That gets pretty complicated. So you do want to simplify in some way. But at the same time, you've got to remember the interconnectedness. So when we're simplifying, actually, the key with the holistic view is to think about, okay, when I am making petroleum and I want to have an energy transition and I want to move away from petroleum, I don't want to mine for any more oil in the ground. Remember, actually, oil is not only used for energy. It's used also for all the plastics that we have in our life.
Yeah.
And a lot of different materials that we are using in our daily use. So we need to make that material transition as well and that is then what I'm talking about, the holistic thinking. And the second holistic thinking is what I would say as well is when we are talking about actually what the levers that we need for change, a lot of focus gets around technology. Yes, it's true. I was in a chemical factory. Right now, I'm in let's say, equipment, medical equipment industry, electronics equipment industry, yes, it's true. We can change our processes to be more efficient. We can create products that are more efficient, that are going to drive the energy transition. But the fact is, it's also about behavior. It's cultural change, right? You can do the math. If the technology is not adopted, it doesn't have the impact. If the technology is adopted, but you just continue to consume so much more, it doesn't have the impact. If you take something like AI holistically, right, it has this transformative power to scale up our innovations. We say, okay, it's going to solve all of the climate problems, all of the nature problems. But at the same time, it's just a behavioral problem. What are we going to use AI to do? Are we going to use AI to solve our societal issues, to give more people access to energy, to healthcare, to what we deem important? Or are we going to use AI to, shop more, to do more stuff on social media, whatever, it's a cultural, behavioral thing, and we need to put in that societal infrastructure as well, right, to enable the change to happen. So that's the second lever of holistic that I really try to emphasize, and I think when the World Energy Council looks at holistic, the way they look at it from an energy prism is they've got an energy trilemma. So they always say you've got to balance energy equity, energy security, and energy sustainability. And we've changed actually the thoughts about balancing. We don't say, it's balancing anymore. Now we're saying, no, the drivers. It doesn't always have to be a trade-off. If you do things smart, sustainability can create value, a lot of value. It can make things more accessible. It can make things cheaper. It can make things more secure. If we're talking about energy, Russia-Ukraine war, right? We were massively dependent on Russian gas. In this case, having more wind and solar ourselves, diversifying our energy portfolio would have made us more secure, right? So sustainability doesn't always have to cost out of all the levers, and that's something that we're trying to drive home as well. It's about people, take the holistic view, and you can create a lot of win-wins if you do things in the right way.
I find this fascinating. If you trumpet too heavily that renewables is just good and just moral without talking about the substance behind it and the real consequences when we don't have it, I feel like it ends up being quite shallow.
I think it is true, right? Because you are getting on your moral high horse, but the rules of a game are the rules of a game. Now, the rules of our society is this. Businesses are there to make profits. If you look at a pension fund, they have a fiduciary responsibility to everybody in that pension to deliver a return, the best return, right? Those are the rules of the game. And right now, it's not always obviously more profitable to be sustainable, right? You have to be creative to get that win-win scenario, but it's not a default. If we change the rules of the game, that's what we talk about with government and cooperation internationally. It can become more and more cases that you can create a positive scenario, because right now the externalities, the damage to the environment, you don't pay for it. So it's not in the rules of the game. But in these current rules, you can still get ahead. If we're talking about access, right? And we're talking about the reason that we don't have a lot of industrialization in some of the developing countries. like Ghana, where I come from. Like, part of that is the infrastructure. Now, the great thing about renewables, is it's not like coal. It's not like oil. You don't have to have some big gas station somewhere providing energy for the whole district. You can put solar panels on your own roof. You can get a battery for your house or your little estate, small business that you're doing, and you can make it happen. You can put in a microgrid, and then small business owners in these developing countries can accelerate the business that they're doing without having to wait until the whole country gets the infrastructure for them to be able to drive a business. That is a value creation right there, right? So this is what we're trying to, and we need to do, because if we just say it's morally right, you should do it, then the retaliation is like, I'm just gonna actually disadvantage myself. I don't see you doing it. And why?
Yeah, there's not a thoughtful explanation behind it.
It's not even fair, to be honest, right? It becomes a elitist. If you're rich, maybe, you can afford to do it, but it's not even fair.
Yeah, this is so important. Like, how do we tell the truth from the lies in the renewable energy marketing landscape when, at least in the past, people have kind of moralized renewables and it's been used as a bit of a moral pedestal in greenwashing?
It's always a journey, right? So we've come from a place where maybe there was more greenwashing in the beginning. A lot of sustainability was part of the, marketing department, part of the CSR, part of the human resources department. And actually, you do need to sell sustainability, because if the customer's not willing to buy it, then how are you going to generate the value? So I'm not saying that sustainability marketing is wrong. I think it's great. We should do it. It just should be the substance behind it.
Yeah.
That's so trying to navigate what's true. But we've come to a situation where now it's part of it's green hushing, because people are doing some sustainable things. They're continuing with their commitments, but maybe because, it's not popular right now within certain demographics, within certain governments, or maybe because they're not sure enough about their claims, they're not bragging about it. So we've got both of those happening right now in this coexistence. How do you navigate to the truth? It's quite tricky, to be honest, because there's a whole load of certifications out there. And that's why I think regulation is trying to drive some of that change. So you've seen the EU bring in CSRD. It's tried to streamline and make consistent a lot of the reporting that's coming out from at least the EU companies.
Can you unpack what CSRD is for us?
So CSRD, Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, is for basically large companies who are required to report on the material topics. So they don't have to report on every single aspect of sustainability, but they have to report on the ones that are material to them.
Yeah.
From a lot of companies, it's almost always, climate change, climate action. Often it can be like circular economy and resource use, which is one. But for other companies, it can be looking more at, water, biodiversity, pollution. On the environmental front, of course, you've got also, it's the full ESG range. So you've also got social and governance aspects towards it as well. Within this, there's standards, there's definitions, there's explanations, there's requirements. It's a whole amount of bureaucracy. Actually, a lot of companies don't like it, but data is the key. If you don't know if we're sustainable or not, if you can't compare one company's performance to the other company's performance on sustainability, how do you do anything? How do you even hold anyone accountable? So you'd think to yourself, okay, it's all the annual reports. Nobody reads this. Well, it's true. Maybe the end customers of these companies don't read it. However, the investors read it. They read these things. Your competitors read it. You yourself put all of the time and effort into knowing it. And the people within the company, once they see what level they're performing at, the awareness, they want to step up. Your competitors think, I got to be better. So it's creating the flywheel. And that's the key.
Let's dive more into your specific interest in sustainability. Have you got any anecdotes from projects with the World Energy Council or personal or other professional projects that kind of, capture why this matters to you?
When we're looking at some of the things that we did with the World Energy Council, I think the key anecdote and that I have is really from the way that we set up community. Because before getting into the World Energy Council, I was in a company. I was trying to drive energy transition within my engineering role, and you need a tribe to get things going. You need other people with the same thoughts as you. And I had some people within that company, but when you get out into a world of, other people with experts, but also with passionate people who are also experts, right? With leaders, you have that conversation. You understand a new way also of framing your topic. So for me, when I joined the World Energy Council, we had these Visionario project, it was a future energy leaders project that we created ourselves. And it was looking at scenario outlooks for basically what would happen in terms of, global warming, energy transition, energy outlook. Essentially, it was comparing several different sources of energy outlooks and then bringing them with a theme, because there's a lot of inconsistencies between them. And you think, okay, this is just a research exercise. But the key for me wasn't necessarily doing these energy outlooks, but the key was the transformation where we had startup within our group. We had energy people from consultancy. I was from industry, people from the energy industry themselves, people who are in finance, law, in engineering, all looking at this outlook and, hey, so what? What can we do about it? And we took on then construction and real estate and thought, hey, a big key can be optimizing our building energy using the technology there to basically just be very efficient with the simple solutions. I think the key is, once you've addressed the problem, you need the so what, right? And what are you going to do about it? You need to come with the solutions. And that startup, they went further and they've built up that solution and they're running with it, winning awards and things. So we, as a community, we got insights into different directions, and we got to pitch also and to discuss with energy experts and leaders about this, and just to bringing together the people, regardless of what the exercise is. If you've got all these minds on the same table, like this is the moment, you know?
So what were the specifics of that particular project? What were you solving for?
We're off track with the energy transition.
Okay.
And we wanted to have drivers as to what we wanted to do about it. So in the built environment, that's a significant part of our emissions. It depends which source you're looking at, but some sources are saying 20% of our total emissions and energy use coming from the built environment, which makes sense because, like, at your home, you're using electricity.
Yeah.
Even if you go to the office, you're using electricity. In the factory, they're powering all the machines, and they've got the aircon on. And so you can link a lot of stuff to the built environment, right? So we thought, okay, one of the key pillars we can do with a quite simple solution with technology that's already available is, hey, how about in the built environment, we know that in certain places and at certain times, people manage to reduce their energy use extremely, was Ukraine war, another example. Energy bills went through the roof. People managed to reduce, right? It's not nice, but it shows you can use less, but there's a way of using less without being cold, right? You can just optimize, and we have these things, and actually with the availability of like AI and things like this now, and also just personal awareness, you can, you can do temperature control. You can think about when you need to use different streams of energy, and when your process, do you have certain processes? You turning the oven on, 1 hour before you need to use it.
These are the things.
And you think, oh, that's a ridiculous example, but in an office, plenty of places have the lights on all the time. Plenty of factories are powering up their machines, keeping their machines on full power when it's not running, because it's too much effort to start up and shut down. But is it too much effort, or is there a way, you can tone it down to a standby, and so when we're talking about this kind of optimization, and first start with the monitoring, right? And then after the monitoring, you can go with optimization, right? And this spoke to me because not from energy projects that I was doing specifically, but I had done Lean Six Sigma projects in the industry where we were looking at improving our yield. So we were just trying to get more products out with less raw material. Actually, it helps. It helps on the energy front because you're being more efficient with the materials. But that wasn't the point that we were trying to do. We were trying to do that for financial reasons and keeping the same quality, right? And how did we do this, right? From a Lean Six Sigma point of view, we went in and we saw that there were some variations in the process going up and down from one operator to another, from sometimes within the same operator who wasn't keeping things steady. So, first we created this, the standard, this baseline, this, and we created also better monitoring tools. And based on that, with some advanced analytics, just statistics plus, and some programming. I didn't do the programming. I had a very smart colleague who did that. We were able to give the recommendation per situation. What should you do on this baseline? So this is the conditions that you're supposed to be running. Something happens, you've got to change your conditions for a certain reason. Maybe it's a reason that you can predict because you're changing products. It's a startup shutdown. Maybe it's an unknown reason because there's a variability in the feedstock. Sometimes, it's like something happens with one of the equipment. It's not performing as well. It might be clogging, whatever. So, but this AI can give you that recommendation, and then you pull through on that recommendation, and all of a sudden you are making way more. We're talking about millions of euros of savings. We're talking about, maybe 5% gains, in terms of from the same, you're just getting more, it's like you just squeeze the lemon and you were squeezing with your hand, and somehow you got the same lemon and you're squeezing still with your hand. You've not changed what you're squeezing it with, but there's more coming out because you've got the technique. That's what you can do in a built environment. So that's why I sprung on that idea as well. But there were several other groups that sprung on other ideas. And that's just one example. So with World Energy Council, they we've got congresses where we've got ministerial roundtables, CEO roundtables, talks where we're bringing people together to make agreements to find ways forward. and to basically get the person who's like, it's not working, it's all their fault, get the other person who's like, I need you to do it, and come together to a solution, right? Yeah. That's the way, because a lot of the time it's easy to complain from your point, but you don't understand the full picture from the leadership point, but together, combine the knowledge. What can you do?
When we compare the optimizer perspective of let's try and get more for what we have with the promise of abundance that leads a lot of the renewable kind of communication, how do we kind of reconcile these two things? As a consumer, I want to be well optimized in the way that I'm consuming things, be that energy or anything else. But I also love the idea of energy being abundant and cheap. How do we reconcile these two things?
Well, yeah, we've got to remember actually that fossil fuels led the society that we've got today. They gave us that abundance, right? Because of the fossil fuels and the energy that we will have, we've got trains, we've got the machines that make stuff, we've got some of those is healthcare technologies, is the medicines, all of our planes, the holidays that we're having. You saw Dubai, go from desert to paradise, riches, all because of fossil fuels, right? So the abundance is like somehow a real power from energy. Now, with renewables, it's true that it seems almost too good to be true because it's free, let's say, the sun shines, you don't pay for the sunshine, and you get energy out, right? And that is where we say, hey, there's a potential for abundance. But at the same time, we're not at that stage where we've put in all of the infrastructure to be able to have that abundance and affordability. And we also have to be realistic with ourselves, right? In terms of when will we be at that stage? So I do think if you're selling abundance right now as the way forwards for renewables, it's good for marketing, but it's not necessarily the truth. The truth is we need to do both, and we need to think about how do we, distribute what we've got, right? We can have abundance on a personal scale and say, we need the companies to be way more efficient. We can play around with a lot of things, but we need to make those kind of decisions at government levels, and we need to have a collaboration to make that with the industry. It's a swap. But the abundance from renewables, personally, I don't fully believe in it. I believe there's a lot of benefits from renewables in terms of the impact, that were less impact, also in terms of some accessibility that we can have in developing countries, especially with a lot of solar potential. There's a lot of countries with a lot of wind potential or a lot of hydro potential, or coastal countries. So those countries, yes, we can create energy for them, and that energy can lead to better standards of living. The countries already have a great standard of living where they have inequality within the country, right? Renewables is not going to solve inequality. Governments need to sit down, think hard and long about what they want to do to solve that inequality, but renewables isn't going to drive that abundance for them.
I too am, I guess, hold the skeptical lens on that point, also because it kind of neglects or doesn't take into account how markets work. Everybody doesn't have everything all the time on a constant upward trajectory. There needs to be competition. There needs to be deprivation to drive innovation. There needs to be like a sense of contrast, right?
Absolutely. Actually, that's one of the things that we're talking about in the European industrial climate, right? We're talking about a lot of loss of industry because Europe's competitiveness is going down.
Right.
You need a scenario where companies are incentivized to be in Europe or wherever you are. The companies are incentivized to innovate, not just to keep cashing in on what they've done previously. And you want them to be incentivized to do the right thing for society. And that's sometimes, a bit of a balancing, a bit of a struggle, because you want to be incentivized to be there, but incentivized to do the right thing for society. It's like, well, if they can get away with it elsewhere. But this is the levers and the puzzles that, that our leaders, with all the brains that they have at their disposal, can solve. But they can solve it quite easily if they just sit down, chat with each other and agree, right? So, but for markets, we need a competition. Competition is what makes startups go. And it's what makes companies take a risk to get involved with these startups, because you need startups for the speed, you need the big corporates for the scale. 100%. I've spent a lot of time talking about maybe companies and governments, and I do want to say one last thing: the power of finance. One of the things I'm passionate about is also empowering others. That's the reason that I swapped from an engineering manager role for myself in industry, where I was doing sustainability as part of my role, doing it with my own hands and feet, to a corporate sustainability role where I was going out, talking to all those engineering managers, talking to local sustainability managers, operations people, coaching them, to go out and make the impact themselves so I can have bigger impact, right? And one of the key things when you're an engineering manager is always running those business cases, right? To get the investment into your project, or product or process, whatever it is. It's the same on a bigger scale. We need the finance to be putting in the right direction. And finance, it should be public-private partnership, but it is money makes the world go round. So that's also one of the reasons I was really excited and proud to get involved with Thaddeus Investment Management on some of their alternative funds. They're doing impact investments. Energy transition funds is one of the funds that I'm involved with. They've also got a green fund, which I'm involved with. And by choosing directly to put your money into these innovators, right, you are helping them to enable the transition, right? And they are creating a technology, for instance, that will then be used by multiple companies, many people. So I think the governments really, especially on the innovation front, which was linking there, need to get back to the table and say, how can we drive sustainable innovation? How can we get the finance right? Because why is the finance not going there? Because of the risk of return. They find the risk too high right now. So this is where I'm talking about public-private partnership. Let's de-risk it. Let's take those bold steps. If we look at the mega companies that are out today, those are people that took big risks individually. If you want to win big, you got to take those risks, right? So whether it's Tesla, Elon Musk, or Mark Zuckerberg, they went for a long time getting investors, no profits, and then they cracked it. So we need governments to help out those companies and help create a scenario that attracts the private funding, also private investors, people who want to put their money where their mouth is, to start investing in impact. Whether that's you as personally, when you're choosing your bank, when you're choosing every single piece of clothing or whatever you're doing, you can think about it. It's a vote. It's an investment in that company. Whatever you do, it's an investment. Whether it's you as an individual in that way, or whether you are, in a family office, you've got a huge amount, whether you're a wealth fund manager, or a company with a big investment portfolio, and you can make those share investments. Everybody needs to think about, what am I doing with my money? Every money I'm investing, am I investing for the good of society, or am I investing for the damage of society, besides the fact that I'm getting what I want from it, right? So that's the key. Finance.
I feel like the general consensus is that people lack financial literacy. Do you think that sustainable finance is a niche or like a microcosm or like a lens that we should just kind of see our finances through as a whole?
I do think we do need to do it more. I think the sustainability is now, it's grown in awareness. We understand a lot about, climate, in the schools now. There's nobody not heard of it. Some people deny it, but they heard of it. They've been taught it. But the so what is missing, right? And one of the easiest ways you can help address that is with how you spend your money, what the products you choose, the companies you choose, and how you do your banking, whether you're investing or saving somewhere or whatever. You can choose that, but people are not necessarily aware of that. So maybe if they were made aware of this with some government campaigns, the same way we've done campaigns around smoking. I mean, there's been some really nasty campaigns around drink driving and stuff on TV, and you think, oh, I don't want to watch that. But we did it, and we made people sit through it because we didn't want people to drink drive or sleep at the wheel or smoke. So if we want also to drive transition, that's what I was talking about, social infrastructure. Yeah, we need to make the social infrastructure to help the cultural change. That includes the let's say the sustainable finance literature, and that's for different levels. An individual has a different level as what, and a different specific needs of sustainable finance literature as what a company. We need to teach companies also, hey, how to do your business sustainably, but also the wealth fund managers, the private investors, the banks, sustainable finance, how the pension funds, how they can do that.
Yeah, you're spot on. All of us need a different level of financial literacy for our daily lives. You've got, as you say, like professionals that work in finance are going to need an entirely different sort of mental toolkit than the everyday average Joe is going to need to deal with their finances. We're going to wrap up with what we call Quickfire Curiosity, which is our short, personal and slightly philosophical trivia to end off with. First of which being, I used to say, would you consider yourself a futurist? But given that everybody pretty much said yes, I'd say, what does futurism mean to you?
Futurism for me is optimism about the future, believing that we can do better and that you can play a role in making it better.
If you were to speak to your younger self going through a critical juncture, whether that be leaving or entering some form of education, what would be your key piece of advice?
Be comfortable taking a risk, being uncomfortable, being outsider in the group. Just embrace it. It's not wrong to be different, just embrace it, use it as your strength, run with it, and see if you can find others, bring them along to where you are.
For people that are at a similar point to the one we just discussed, whether maybe leaving or entering education or having a career change, what questions would you encourage them to ask themselves to spot the best opportunities?
What are you good at? I was good at, for me, science and maths. So, and I had less skills in the English and the arts. I don't want to talk about my drawing skills. So it opened up a lot of possibilities.
Yeah.
That's number one. What do you like? I loved making stuff. Right? So I knew that I was going to get into some kind of role in making stuff, innovation. So that's how I became an engineer, chemical engineer, because I liked the chemical part. It's magic, chemistry, something from nothing. All of a sudden, you put certain metal into water and it starts fizzing. Fun, right? And a lot of people always say, "Oh, what can you make money at?" But you can make money doing a lot of things. I think also, what do you want to leave behind? So, I think you're asking me this question: what would you say to your younger self? Actually, the younger self should ask, when I'm 10 years older, 15 years older, 20 years older, what do I want to leave behind? What do I want to say about myself, about the decisions? What do I want other people to say? Or how do I want to feel about that? Where do you want to go with this? So when you understand what makes your heart tick, what drives you, what you value, what's important to you in that, what you care about, what you prioritize, it makes things simpler and I think that's coming back to when I was a kid. For people, it was quite simple what they did. It was and how they did it, because when you don't have much, you prioritize very quickly. When you have all the choices, it becomes very difficult to make choices. But you just get back down to the core about what is it to you, what is it gonna be to you.
Thaddeus, thank you so much for joining me on Clean Talk today. I've really enjoyed getting your insights as someone who works across the material or chemical sciences as well. I think the overlap between that and energy is something that I haven't explored as much, and I'm feeling privileged to have heard it from you. So thank you for your time today.
Thanks so much for having me, Luke.
And thank you for listening into today's episode of Clean Talk. If you want to watch more of the show, you can click the link to my right. And if you are a marketer or a founder in the sustainability or clean technology space, and you've got a story to share in 2026, head over to harmonvisuals.com/services to find out how we can support you with your communications and storytelling objectives. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.